They laughed in his face, and told him he couldn't afford a $1.2 million car. He didn't argue. Didn't react. Just stood there, calm, silent. The salesman smirked, until one quiet phone call changed everything. Seconds later, the entire showroom froze. Because the man they just insulted wasn't who they thought he was. And what he did next, no one saw coming. "You can't afford this car." The words didn't just land, they echoed. Inside the marble-polished luxury showroom, everything was designed to feel perfect: soft golden lighting, glass walls reflecting million-dollar machines, and silence so controlled it almost felt rehearsed. At the center of it all stood a masterpiece, a silver Rolls-Royce, shining like liquid metal under the lights. And beside it, stood a man no one paid attention to. He wore simple clothes. No watch flashing status. No designer labels screaming wealth. Just calm eyes, and quiet presence. That man was Keanu Reeves. But in that moment, to everyone in the room, he was just another outsider. The salesman adjusted his cufflinks before stepping closer, his shoes clicking confidently against the floor. He didn't greet Keanu with warmth. He didn't offer assistance. Instead, he scanned him, head to toe, making a judgment in seconds. And then came the sentence. "I think you should look at something more affordable." A faint smirk followed. Not loud. Not aggressive. But sharp enough to cut through the silence. For a second, everything paused. A couple nearby stopped pretending not to listen. Another salesman glanced over, sensing tension. Moments like this don't need volume. They carry weight on their own. Keanu didn't respond immediately. His fingers gently traced the curve of the Rolls-Royce's hood, as if appreciating craftsmanship rather than reacting to insult. His face didn't change. No anger. No embarrassment. Just stillness. That calmness made the moment even more uncomfortable. Because the salesman expected something: defensiveness, maybe even apology. That's how these situations usually go. But this silence felt different. "Sir," the salesman continued, a little firmer now, "this vehicle is priced at $1.2 million. He let the number hang, as if it would push the message through more clearly. Still, nothing. Keanu slowly lifted his gaze, not in challenge, but in quiet acknowledgement. "I heard you," he said softly. 3 simple words. But the tone completely disarmed the situation. No tension. No ego. Just awareness. And then something unexpected happened. Keanu reached into his pocket. Not dramatically. Not to prove anything. Just naturally. He pulled out his phone. The salesman sighed internally, almost certain of what was coming. Another customer pretending. Another moment wasted. But Keanu dialed anyway. The phone rang once. Twice. Then someone picked up. Keanu turned slightly away, his voice low. But steady enough for the silence around him to carry pieces of it. "Hey, yeah." A pause. "I'm at the dealership." Another pause. His eyes moved back to the Rolls-Royce. "It's the silver one." The salesman folded his arms now, watching like this was some kind of performance. Customers nearby leaned in slightly, pretending to browse while listening closely. Because something about this moment didn't feel ordinary anymore. Keanu's voice stayed calm. "I like it. Short. Clear. Certain." Then he listened. A faint smile appeared, not wide, not showy. Just enough to suggest a decision had already been made. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think I'll take it." The words didn't come with excitement. They came with certainty. And that's what made them heavy. The salesman let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head. To him, it sounded like imagination. A fantasy someone says out loud just to feel better. He had seen this before. Or at least, he thought he had. Keanu ended the call. No dramatic gestures. No explanation. He simply slipped the phone back into his pocket, and looked at the car again. Like the conversation had already finished somewhere else. The silence returned. But now it wasn't empty. It was building. Because something unseen had just been set into motion. The salesman shifted his weight, slightly uncomfortable now, but still holding on to his earlier judgment. "Sir," he said, trying to regain control of the situation, "we typically require proof of financial capability before discussing purchases at this level." The words were polite. But the meaning? Clear. "You don't belong here." Keanu nodded slowly. Not in agreement, but in understanding. "I get it," he replied. And that was it. No argument. No defense. Just acceptance of the moment. Which somehow made it even harder for the salesman to stand confidently in his position. Because when someone doesn't fight back, you start questioning yourself. Minutes passed. Nothing dramatic happened. No sudden reveal. No raised voices. Just a quiet man, standing beside $1 million car. Waiting. And then the doors of the showroom opened again. Not loudly. But noticeably. A man in a sharp suit walked in quickly, scanning the room with urgency. Not like a customer. Like someone looking for something, or someone. His eyes moved from car to car. Until they stopped. Locked. On Keanu. His expression changed instantly. Confusion turned into recognition. Recognition turned into shock. And then, into something else. Respect. He walked forward without hesitation. Fast. Focused. The sound of his footsteps echoed just enough to pull everyone's attention. The salesman turned, slightly annoyed at the interruption. Until he saw the manager approaching, with urgency he had never shown before. And then, everything began to shift. The air changed. Before anyone said a word. The man who had just entered wasn't walking, he was moving with purpose. Sharp suit. Controlled urgency. Eyes scanning the showroom like something important had just slipped out of place. And then, he saw him. Mr. Reeves? The name didn't explode. It dropped. Heavy. Real. And instantly, everything shifted. The salesman froze. His body didn't move, but his expression did, fast. Confusion cracked into disbelief. Disbelief into panic. Because the name he just heard didn't match the man he had judged only minutes ago. The quiet customer beside the Rolls-Royce was Keanu Reeves. The same man from John Wick. The same face from The Matrix. The same person he had just dismissed. The manager stepped forward quickly, extending his hand, not casually, but with clear respect. "Sir, I'm incredibly sorry, no one informed me you were here." Keanu turned slightly, meeting his gaze with that same calm expression. "It's all right," he said. "I was just looking around." Just looking around. The simplicity of those words made the situation feel even heavier. Because everyone in the room now understood, this wasn't just a customer. This was someone who never needed to prove anything in the first place. The silence that followed wasn't awkward anymore. It was tense. Charged. The manager's eyes shifted, slowly, toward the salesman. And that's when the real pressure began. "What happened here?" he asked. Not loudly. But firmly enough that it didn't need volume. The salesman swallowed. I was just assisting. But the sentence didn't finish. Because even he knew, that wasn't true. He hadn't been assisting. He had been judging. And now, he was standing inside the consequences of that decision. A couple across the showroom whispered quietly. One of them pulled out their phone, pretending to check something, but clearly watching. Another customer stepped a little closer, drawn into the tension like it was unfolding scene by scene. Because moments like this? They don't stay private. They spread. The manager took a step closer to Keanu. "Sir, please, let me personally assist you." His tone had completely changed now. Professional, yes, but layered with urgency. Almost like he was trying to correct something that had already gone too far. Keanu gave a small nod. But instead of speaking immediately, he looked back at the car. That same silver Rolls-Royce. Untouched. Waiting. "It's a beautiful machine," he said quietly. The manager followed his gaze. "It is, sir. One of our finest." A pause. Then Keanu asked something simple. "How long has it been here?" The manager blinked slightly, caught off guard by the question. "Not long. It's a rare model. Custom finish." Keanu nodded again, as if he already knew that. The salesman stood frozen, slightly behind them now. Invisible. Which was ironic, because just minutes ago, he was the one controlling the situation. Now, he couldn't even find the right words to stand inside it. Because everything had flipped. Not because Keanu raised his voice. Not because he proved anything. But because truth revealed itself quietly. The manager turned back to Keanu. "If you'd like, we can arrange a private viewing. Full details, customization options, immediate purchase, whatever you prefer." The offer came fast. Too fast. Almost like he was trying to make up for lost time. Keanu looked at him for a moment. Then, something unexpected happened. He glanced toward the salesman. Not with anger. Not with pride. Just awareness. And that look? It said more than words ever could. Because in that moment, the salesman wasn't being punished. He was being seen. And sometimes, that's worse. "I think I've seen enough," Keanu said calmly. The manager straightened slightly. "Of course, sir. Would you like me to prepare the paperwork?" Another pause. A quiet one. But powerful. Keanu slipped his hands into his pockets, thinking, not like someone making a purchase. But like someone deciding something deeper. Because this moment was no longer about a car. It had become something else entirely. Something about respect. About assumptions. About how quickly people decide who you are, without ever asking. The entire showroom was still watching. Waiting. Because now, this wasn't just a sale. It was a turning point. And whatever Keanu said next was going to define everything that just happened. He looked once more at the Rolls-Royce. Then back at the manager. And finally, at the salesman. The man who started it all. "I'll take it," Keanu said. Simple. Clear. Final. But the way he said it. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like a statement. The manager exhaled, almost in relief. "Right away, sir." He turned quickly, signaling staff, setting things into motion. Papers. Calls. Movement. The showroom came alive again, but differently now. Not calm. Not controlled. But reactive. Because everyone knew. They had just witnessed something they wouldn't forget. The salesman remained still. Watching. Learning, too late. Because in just a few minutes, he had gone from authority to example. And the lesson was only just beginning. The word, "I'll take it," should have ended everything. In most cases, it does. A sale is made. Papers are signed. Smiles return. The story fades. But this moment? It didn't feel finished. It felt like something deeper was just beginning. The showroom, once calm and controlled, was now alive with quiet urgency. Staff moved faster. Phones rang softly in the background. A junior assistant rushed past carrying documents, while another whispered instructions near the front desk. Everything was in motion. Everything, except one person. The salesman. He stood exactly where he had been, only now, the ground beneath him didn't feel the same. His earlier confidence had disappeared, replaced by something far heavier. Realization. Not loud. Not dramatic. But undeniable. Because in just a few minutes, he had gone from judging a stranger, to realizing he had misjudged someone the entire world respected. And the worst part? No one had corrected him. He had done it to himself. Across the room, Keanu Reeves stood calmly beside the silver Rolls-Royce, as if none of the chaos around him mattered. His posture hadn't changed. His expression remained steady. Because for him, this wasn't chaos. It was just another moment. The manager returned quickly, holding a sleek black folder. "Sir, we've prepared the initial documents. We can finalize everything immediately, or arrange delivery, customization, whatever you prefer." His tone was careful now. Respectful. Measured. Not forced, but aware. Keanu took the folder, glancing at it briefly, but not opening it. Instead, he asked a question. "Who usually buys cars like this?" The manager blinked slightly, caught off guard again. "Typically, high-net-worth individuals. Collectors. Business leaders." His voice trailed off. Because the answer suddenly felt incomplete. Keanu nodded slowly. "And do they all look the same when they walk in?" The question landed quietly. But it hit hard. The manager didn't answer immediately. Because he understood what was being asked. And more importantly, why. The room grew still again. Not because something dramatic happened. But because something honest was unfolding. The kind of moment people don't forget, because it forces them to reflect. Keanu closed the folder gently. "I'm not in a rush," he said. The manager straightened. "Of course, sir. Take your time." But Keanu didn't look at the car this time. He looked toward the salesman. That same man who had stood so confidently just minutes ago. Now, barely able to hold eye contact. And then, Keanu did something no one expected. He walked toward him. Slowly. Calmly. No anger. No tension. Just intention. The entire showroom seemed to hold its breath. Because this was the moment everyone had been silently waiting for. The confrontation. The reaction. The consequence. The salesman straightened slightly as Keanu approached, unsure whether to speak or stay silent. "Sir, I..." But Keanu gently raised his hand. Not to silence him harshly. But to pause the moment. "You were doing your job," Keanu said. The words were calm. Unexpected. The salesman blinked, confused. Because that wasn't the reaction he had prepared for. I made an assumption," he admitted quietly. There it was. The truth. Simple. Raw. No excuses. And somehow, that made the moment heavier than any argument could have. Keanu nodded. Yeah, he said softly. A pause. Then he added. We all do, sometimes. The tension shifted. Not gone, but transformed. Because this wasn't about winning anymore. It was about understanding. The salesman looked up slightly, surprised, not just by the forgiveness, but by the absence of ego. Most people in this position would have pushed back. Made a point. Claimed power. But Keanu? He didn't need to. And that was the real difference. You just have to be careful who you decide someone is, before you know them, Keanu continued. His voice wasn't harsh. But it carried weight. Because it came from experience. From years of being recognized, and not recognized. From living in both worlds at once. The showroom remained silent. No one interrupted. No one moved. Because this wasn't just a conversation anymore. It was a lesson, happening in real time. The salesman nodded slowly. I understand. And this time, he meant it. Not because he was told to. But because he felt it. Keanu gave a small, almost invisible smile. Then turned back toward the car. The moment passed, but its impact stayed. The manager stepped forward again, carefully. Sir, shall we proceed? Keanu looked at the Rolls-Royce once more. The same car. Same shine. Same value. But somehow, it didn't feel like the center of the story anymore. Because now, something else mattered more. He took a quiet breath. And for the first time since he walked in, he hesitated. Not out of doubt. But out of thought. Because sometimes, the most powerful decision isn't the one you can make. It's the one you choose to make. And right now, Keanu was about to make a choice. That no one in that showroom would see coming. The showroom waited. Not loudly. Not visibly. But you could feel it, in the stillness, in the way conversations had quietly stopped, in the way even the staff moved more carefully now. Because something unusual was happening. A moment that should have been simple, had turned into something far deeper. Keanu Reeves stood beside the silver Rolls-Royce, the same car that had started it all. The same car worth $1.2 million. The same car that triggered judgment, and revealed truth. The manager held the folder, ready. The salesman stood a few steps behind, silent, watching. And everyone else? Waiting. Because they all believed they knew what would happen next. He would sign. He would buy the car. And the story would end. But life doesn't always follow expectations. And neither did Keanu. He looked at the car one more time. The polished surface reflected his face. But not as a celebrity, just as a man thinking. Then slowly, he stepped back. It was a small movement. But it changed everything. The manager noticed instantly. Sir, he asked carefully. Keanu exhaled softly. It's an incredible car, he said. A pause. Then. But I don't think I need it. The words didn't sound dramatic. They didn't need to be. Because their impact? Immediate. The manager blinked, caught completely off guard. I understand, he replied quickly, trying to stay composed. Would you like to consider another model? Or perhaps a custom order? Keanu shook his head gently. No. Silence. The kind that fills a room before anyone knows how to react. Because this wasn't just unexpected. It didn't make sense to them. A man who could easily afford it. A man who had just decided to buy it. Now choosing to walk away. Why? The answer came, not loudly, but clearly. I think I came here for something else, Keanu said. The manager hesitated. Sir? Keanu turned slightly, his gaze moving across the showroom, then stopping for just a second on the salesman. Not accusing. Not proud. Just, aware. A reminder, he said. Those two words landed heavier than the price of the car ever could. Because now, everyone understood. This was never about the Rolls-Royce. It was about something much deeper. The manager lowered the folder slightly, unsure how to respond. The salesman looked down, absorbing every word. Because this moment wasn't humiliating. It was humbling. And that difference mattered. Keanu took a few slow steps forward, away from the car. The sound of his shoes against the polished floor echoed softly, each step marking a decision already made. I've been in places where people saw me, and places where they didn't, he continued calmly. The room listened. No interruptions. No distractions. Just truth. And it's easy to forget how much that changes things. Another pause. But it shouldn't. The manager nodded slightly, understanding more with each word. Because this wasn't criticism. It was perspective. Something far more powerful. Keanu glanced once more at the car. Still perfect. Still valuable. Still untouched. But now, it felt different. Smaller, somehow. Because the real moment had already passed. And it had nothing to do with money. He turned back toward the manager. Take care of your customers, he said gently. All of them. Simple advice. But coming from someone who had just lived the opposite of it. It carried weight. The manager straightened immediately. Yes, sir. Absolutely. And you could tell, this wasn't just a response. It was a commitment. Because moments like this don't just pass through businesses. They change them. Keanu gave a small nod. Then, without another word, he began walking toward the exit. No drama. No attention-seeking. Just quiet movement. But every eye in the showroom followed him. Because they knew. They had just witnessed something rare. Not a purchase. Not a display of wealth. But a display of character. The salesman finally looked up as Keanu passed by. Their eyes met for a brief second. And in that moment, everything that needed to be said was already understood. No anger. No resentment. Just a lesson. Accepted. Keanu reached the door. Paused for a fraction of a second. Then stepped outside. And just like that, he was gone. But the silence he left behind? It stayed. Because now, the showroom wasn't the same. The staff wasn't the same. The salesman definitely wasn't the same. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing someone can do is walk away. And mean it. The door closed softly behind him. And just like that, Keanu Reeves was gone. No cameras. No headlines. No dramatic exit. But inside the showroom, nothing felt the same anymore. The silence he left behind wasn't empty. It was heavy. The kind of silence that forces people to think about what just happened, and what it meant. For a long moment, no one moved. The manager still held the folder, unopened now. Useless. The silver Rolls-Royce still stood in the center, shining exactly the same as before. But somehow, it didn't feel as important anymore. Because something far more valuable had just happened in that room. Something no one could put a price on. The manager slowly lowered the folder onto the desk. Then he turned. His eyes moved across the staff, pausing briefly on each person, before finally stopping on the salesman. Everyone, he said calmly, breaking the silence. His voice wasn't angry. But it carried authority. Take a moment. That was all. No shouting. No immediate lecture. Because he understood something important. When a lesson is powerful enough, you don't need to force it. People feel it on their own. The staff stood still, absorbing everything. Some looked down. Some exchanged quiet glances. But no one spoke. Because they all knew. They had just witnessed a moment that would stay with them. The manager stepped closer to the showroom floor, his tone steady. What happened here today, he continued, is exactly what we must never allow to happen again. Simple words. But direct. Clear. Final. His gaze shifted again, this time resting fully on the salesman. Not with anger. But with expectation. Because this wasn't about punishment. It was about responsibility. The salesman swallowed hard, stepping forward slightly. I understand, he said quietly. And this time. There was no hesitation in his voice. No defensiveness. Just truth. I judged someone before I knew them. The admission hung in the air. Honest. Unfiltered. And more powerful than any excuse could have been. The manager nodded once. That's where it starts, he replied. A pause. Make sure it ends here. The message was clear. Learn from it. Grow from it. Don't repeat it. The salesman looked around the showroom, the same place he had worked in for years. The same place where he believed he understood people. But now, he saw it differently. Because today had shown him something he hadn't realized before. That confidence without awareness can quickly turn into arrogance. And assumptions? They don't just affect others. They define you. He took a slow breath. I won't forget this, he said. And for the first time. It sounded like a promise. Days passed. Then weeks. But the story didn't disappear. It stayed. Not as gossip. Not as rumor. But as a quiet standard that everyone remembered. Something shifted inside that showroom after that day. Staff greeted every customer differently. Not just with politeness. But with attention. With presence. With respect that didn't depend on appearance. Because they had learned the hard way. You never really know who someone is. Or what they're capable of. Or what kind of impact a single moment can leave. The salesman changed too. Not overnight. But genuinely. He listened more. Judged less. And approached every person who walked through those doors. As if they mattered. Because they did. And sometimes, late in the evening, when the showroom grew quiet again, his eyes would drift back to that exact spot. Where a man in simple clothes once stood beside $1 million car. And said nothing. But taught everything. Because in the end, this was never about a Rolls-Royce. It wasn't about money. Or status. Or proving a point. It was about something far more powerful. Respect. The kind that doesn't depend on what someone wears. Or what they own. Or how they look when they walk through a door. And maybe that's why Keanu Reeves never needed to buy the car. Because he had already given them something far more valuable. A lesson they would carry long after the shine of any luxury faded. A reminder that the quietest person in the room might just be the one who changes it forever.